The call came at 11:37 on a Tuesday night and I almost didn't answer it. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment with my back against the bed, eating leftover pad thai straight from the container, trying to forget that my stepmother had just told my father I had been stealing from the family. That was the word she used. Stealing. I had taken my own laptop from the house I grew up in, the laptop I bought with my own paycheck from my second job. The laptop I had left there by accident over Thanksgiving because I'd been rushing to catch a red-eye back to Portland. Stealing. My father believed her. He always believed her. I looked at my phone screen. It said Uncle Ray. I hadn't spoken to my uncle in almost 4 years, not since my father had told me, in that calm, measured voice he used when he wanted you to know he was serious, that choosing to maintain a relationship with his brother was the same as choosing a side, and if I chose that side, I should be very clear about what I was giving up. I answered anyway. Claire. His voice was the same, steady, low, the kind of voice that didn't change its register whether he was ordering coffee or telling you the building was on fire. I need you to listen to me carefully. Uncle Ray? Not yet. Listen first. So I listened. He talked for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the timer on my phone the whole time, standing in my kitchen now, pad thai forgotten on the floor. By minute 3, I had stopped breathing normally. By minute 7, I was sitting on the counter. By minute 11, I was crying, and I don't cry easily. I stopped crying easily when I was about 9 years old, which is roughly when I figured out that tears in our house were treated as performance rather than pain. How long have you known? I asked when he finished. Long enough, he said. But now you need to know too. I want to tell you who I am before I tell you what happened next, because I think it matters. I'm 28 years old. I work in financial compliance at a mid-sized firm in Portland, Oregon. I am extremely good at my job, which requires me to look at rows of numbers and find the one that doesn't belong, the transaction that's slightly off, the account that moves money in a pattern that almost makes sense but not quite. I am good at finding the thing that is almost hidden. Almost. I grew up in Beaverton, in a house with a 3-car garage and a mother who died of a brain aneurysm when I was 7. My father remarried when I was 10. My stepmother is 11 years younger than my father, which made her 31 at the wedding, which made her close enough to my age that she never quite decided whether to treat me like a daughter or a rival. Most of the time she split the difference and treated me like a problem. She has 2 daughters from her first marriage. They were 8 and 6 when she married my father. They are now 26 and 24. They both still live at home. They both work. Technically, my older stepsister does something with social media that my father calls her little business, and my younger stepsister is figuring things out, which has meant figuring things out for 3 years now while my father pays her car note. Neither of them has ever been told she is stealing for taking something from the house. Neither of them has ever been asked to leave a room so the adults could talk. Neither of them has ever been handed a paper towel instead of a napkin at her own kitchen table because we're not using the good ones today. Small things. I know they sound small, but small things are the medium in which larger things grow. I left for college at 17 on a partial academic scholarship and worked 2 jobs my entire 4 years. My father contributed to my tuition. I want to be accurate about this. He did. But the contribution came with quarterly reviews where he would sit across from me and go through my grades, my activities, my choices, and explain to me what I was doing wrong. My stepmother sat beside him at these meetings. She never spoke. She didn't need to. She'd already spoken privately, before the meeting, in the way she always worked. Quietly, incrementally, like water wearing down stone. I graduated and moved to Portland, and got a job and built a life. I came home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and my father's birthday in July. I was polite. I brought wine. I slept in my childhood bedroom, which had been redecorated without my input at some point. My things in boxes in the basement, new curtains, a chair where my desk used to be. I told myself it was fine. I had Portland. I had my job, my apartment, my friends. I had a life that was mine. What I didn't have, what I didn't know I was missing, was the truth about my mother's estate. My mother came from money. Not generational wealth, not the kind that announces itself, but the quiet kind, the kind that had been in her family for 2 generations and grown steadily through careful investment, and a grandfather who had understood real estate in the Pacific Northwest before anyone else did. When she died, she left behind a trust. The trust was structured to pass to me when I turned 25, managed in the interim by my father as trustee. I turned 25 3 years ago. I never received anything. My father told me, when I was 22 and had finally gotten old enough to ask, that my mother's estate had been largely depleted by medical bills, and that what remained was tied up in administrative processes. I believed him because he was my father, and because I didn't know how to not believe him, and because the alternative, that he was lying, was a door I wasn't ready to open. My Uncle Ray, my mother's younger brother, had been trying to open that door for years. This is why my father cut him off. This is why I had been told that maintaining a relationship with my uncle was choosing a side. My father had spent 4 years making sure I stayed away from the one person who could tell me the truth, and the reason he could do it was simple. He knew me. He knew that I had spent my entire life trying to make him proud of me, and that the threat of losing that, even a pale, conditional, frequently withdrawn version of pride, was enough to keep me in line. Almost. He miscalculated on the laptop. The laptop thing was small. That's what I keep coming back to. It was a small thing and it should have stayed a small thing. I'd left it there over Thanksgiving. I'd called to ask my stepsister to mail it back. She'd said sure, and then hadn't. I'd called again and she'd said she'd get to it, and then a week later my father had called me and said, very calmly, that my stepmother had seen some things on the laptop that concerned her and they needed to talk about my choices. You went through my laptop, I said. Your stepsister needed to use a computer for. You went through my laptop. Claire, I think you should listen before you. That's my private property. That's my personal. And this family, my father said, and he used the measured voice, we don't have secrets. I drove to Beaverton that weekend. I drove 2 hours each way because I wanted to look him in the face when they had this conversation. I wanted to not do it over the phone. I walked into that house and I asked for my laptop, and my stepmother looked at me with that particular smile she had, the one that was technically a smile but functioned as a door closing, and told me it wasn't a good time to get into all of this. All of what? I said. I just want my laptop. We're concerned about some of the financial documents we saw in there, my father said. Some of the things you've been looking into. And there it was. I had been looking into it. I had been looking into my mother's trust for about 8 months, quietly, using the skills I used every day at work, following the numbers the way I followed numbers professionally. I had found inconsistencies. I had found transfers. I had found inconsistencies. I had found transfers. I had found a pattern that almost made sense, but not quite. I hadn't confronted anyone yet because I didn't have enough. I was still building the picture. They had found my files. Give me my laptop, I said. I think we should all sit down and give me my laptop right now. My stepmother said quietly, still smiling, I think you should lower your voice. The girls are home. The girls. 26 and 24 years old. The girls. I left without the laptop. I drove back to Portland with my hand so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles ached for 2 days afterward. And then, 3 days later, Uncle Ray called. He had been watching. He had been watching from a careful distance for a long time, and he had his own files. He had his own picture, built over years, and it was complete. He had spoken to an attorney. He had spoken to a forensic accountant. He had, he told me, been waiting until he had everything before he reached out to me because he only wanted to do this once and he wanted to do it right. What do you need from me? I asked. I need you to come home one more time, he said, and I need you to let me handle the rest. I took a Friday off work. I drove back to Beaverton on a Thursday night and stayed at a hotel 20 minutes from my father's house. Uncle Ray flew in from Seattle. He brought his attorney, a woman named Mrs. Okafor, who wore a gray blazer and carried a leather document case and spoke in the kind of deliberate, precise sentences that make people involuntarily straighten their posture. We met at the hotel Thursday night, and Uncle Ray laid everything out on the small round table in my room. Statements, transfers, records, a timeline that went back to the month my mother died. The trust had not been depleted by medical bills. The trust was intact. What had changed was the management of it. The quiet, consistent, years-long redirection of investment returns into accounts that my father controlled, and my stepmother's name appeared on. My mother's money had been paying for the 3-car garage. It had been paying for my stepsister's car note. It had been paying for the girls. I sat with that for a long time. Uncle Ray didn't rush me. Miss Okafor organized her documents. The hotel AC hummed. Outside, someone was checking in late, wheels on luggage rolling across the lobby floor. Okay, I said finally. Okay, Uncle Ray said. What do we do tomorrow? Ms. Okafor looked up from her papers. Tomorrow, she said, we have a conversation. I want to be honest about how I felt walking up to that house on Friday morning. I have heard stories like mine. I have read them, watched them, scrolled past them, and in those stories, the person walking back always feels powerful. Righteous. Sure, I did not feel any of those things. I felt sick, the way you feel sick before a presentation that matters, before a conversation that you can't unhave. I felt sad, specifically, in a way I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Because sadness requires you to acknowledge that you wanted something to be different, and I had been working very hard for years not to acknowledge that. I wanted a father who didn't need a measured voice. I wanted a childhood bedroom that still had my things in it. I wanted Thanksgiving dinners where I was not handed a paper towel. I was not going to get those things. I had known that for a while. What I hadn't known, what was different now, was that I didn't have to keep pretending otherwise. My father entered the door in his weekend clothes, khakis and a fleece, coffee mug in hand. He looked at me. He looked past me at Uncle Ray. His face went through several changes very quickly, like a slideshow moving too fast. He settled on the version he used when he was pretending nothing had surprised him. Claire, he said, I didn't know you were coming. I know, I said. Ray. He said my uncle's name the way you might say the name of a city you'd hoped to never visit again. Flat, final. David, my uncle said. I don't think. May we come in? Ms. Okafor said. She didn't phrase it as a question exactly. It had the grammatical shape of a question, but the weight of a statement. We came in. My stepmother came out of the kitchen when she heard voices. She was in her weekend clothes too, hair done, the smile already in place, the door closing before she had fully processed the room. When she saw Uncle Ray, the smile didn't disappear. Exactly. It reconfigured. Tightened at the edges. I'll need everyone seated, Ms. Okafor said. This won't take long. My stepsister, the older one, the social media one, appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. She looked down at the room and then looked at me with an expression I had seen before. It was the one she used when she was calculating. We sat in the living room, the nice living room with the furniture that was for guests. My father sat in his chair, the specific chair, the one that was understood to be his, and my stepmother sat on the arm of it, which she always did when she wanted to signal solidarity. Mrs. Burstair, Okafor sat across from them and set her document case on the coffee table and opened it without hurry. The Marguerite Chen Living Trust, Ms. Okafor said, was established in 2002 and amended in 2009. Claire Chen is the sole beneficiary. The trust reached full distribution threshold she looked at me just briefly 3 years ago, upon Claire's 25th birthday. My father set down his coffee mug. I don't know what Ray has told you, but there's context here that, Mr. Chen. Miss Okafor's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I'll need you to hold your questions until I've finished, please. He held them. She went through it cleanly and without editorializing. The original trust value. The expected growth over 20 years. The actual current balance, which was not zero, which was not depleted, which was a number that made my stepmother's smile finally fully disappear. The record of management fees paid to an account. The record of that account. The record of that account. The record of where the money in that account went. My stepmother said sharply, This is Melissa. My father's voice, but strained now, the measured quality slipping. This is completely Melissa. She stopped. Miss Okafor placed a document on the table. This is a petition for trust accounting filed yesterday in Multnomah County. It requests a full court-supervised audit of trust management from 2009 to present. She placed another document. This is a demand for restitution. Itemized. Another. This is a notice of intent to pursue civil action for breach of fiduciary duty. The room was very quiet. My uncle had not spoken once since we sat down. He sat next to me on the couch with his hands folded in his lap. And I kept looking at him sideways the way you look at someone when you're in a situation where you don't know where else to look. He had my mother's jaw. I'd forgotten that. I hadn't seen him in 4 years, and I'd forgotten that he had my mother's jaw and her way of sitting, still and contained, taking up exactly the space he needed and not 1 inch more. I want to talk to my lawyer, my father said. Of course, Ms. Okafor said. You have 30 days to respond to the petition. I'd suggest to use that time. She closed her document case. We'll also need the laptop returned to Claire today. It constitutes personal property, and its continued retention, following her explicit request for return, could be construed as, "I'll get it," my stepsister said, from the stairs. She had been standing there the whole time. She disappeared and came back 90 seconds later and walked down and handed it to me without meeting my eyes. "Thank you," I said. She didn't answer. I want to tell you about the moment before we left, because I think it matters, and I think it would be easy to get wrong if I weren't careful about it. My father stood up when we stood up, the way he always did, the reflexive manners of someone who is raised to stand when people stood. And for just 1 second, the length of a breath, he looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen from him in 20 years. Not the measured face, not the quarterly review face, not the you need to listen face, something older and smaller, something that might have been the face of a man who understood what he had done. I looked back at him. "I needed that money, Dad," I said. "I was working 2 jobs and eating rice and beans 4 nights a week, and you were taking money my mother left me." He didn't say anything. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said. "I want you to know that. I'm doing this because it's mine, and it was always mine, and I should have had it." My stepmother made a sound, not words, just a sound, a sharp exhale. And my father looked at her, and something moved across his face. Old arithmetic, long habit. "Claire," he started. "I think we're done here," Uncle Ray said. Not loudly, just finally. We left. I sat in the passenger seat of Uncle Ray's rental car for about 2 minutes without speaking. The neighborhood was quiet. Late morning, someone a few houses down raking leaves. Normal. Orderly. The ordinary texture of a Saturday in the suburbs while your life quietly rearranges itself. "How are you doing?" my uncle asked. "I genuinely don't know yet," I said. He nodded like that was a reasonable answer, because it was. He started the car. We had lunch at a diner 20 minutes away. Just the 2 of us. Ms. Okafor had another appointment. She shook my hand and told me to call her if my father's attorney reached out before her 30 days were up. We sat in a booth and ordered eggs and coffee, and my uncle told me about my mother. Real things. Things I hadn't known. She had been funny, he said. Genuinely funny. Dry, the kind of funny that snuck up on you. She had been good at cards. She had been the one in their family who stayed calm in emergencies, which he said was where I got it from. "I don't feel very calm," I said. "You were calm in there." "That was terror," I said. He laughed. It was the same laugh I remembered from when I was little, before everything, before the sides and the choosing. For a second, I was 7 years old at a holiday table, and my mother was alive, and my uncle was making her laugh, and the world was a different shape than it became. I ate my eggs. I drank my coffee. The civil case took 14 months to resolve. I won't walk you through all of it because the details are dense, and some of them are still technically in process, and my attorney has told me to be measured in what I discuss publicly. What I will tell you is this. The forensic accounting confirmed everything Ms. Okafor had laid out. The trust had not been depleted. The redirected funds were documented. My father, facing the civil action and on the advice of his attorney, did not contest the core claims. There was a settlement. The terms are confidential, which is attorney language for significant. My stepmother moved out 6 months into the proceedings. I heard this from a cousin who heard it from someone else. I didn't call my father to ask about it. He called me twice during the 14 months. The first time I let it go to voicemail, and he left a message that said he wanted to talk when things settled down. The second time I answered and we spoke for 7 minutes, and it was not a good conversation, and I haven't heard from him since. I think about him sometimes. Not with the anger I expected, or not only with it, with something more complicated and less resolved. He was my father, and he had looked at me. Once, with the face behind the measured face, and I had seen something there that I didn't know what to do with, and I still don't. I don't think I'm ready to decide what it means yet. I'm not sure I owe anyone that decision on a particular timeline. What I can tell you is what I did with the money. First, I paid off my student loans, every cent. I sat at my kitchen table on a Wednesday evening after work and made the final payment and felt absolutely nothing, which surprised me. I expected satisfaction, and what I got was a blank, neutral space where a number used to be. That's fine. That's allowed. Second, I set up a fund. My mother's name on the documentation, for young women in financial compliance and adjacent fields who need support during early career years, The years when you're eating rice and beans 4 nights a week and working 2 jobs and trying to pretend you're not? Because showing need in professional environments feels like conceding something. The fund is small right now. I intend to grow it. Third, I called my uncle and told him what I had done with the money, and he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "She would have liked that." And I said I thought so too. I still live in Portland. My apartment is the same one, but I bought furniture that I actually chose, which sounds minor and is not. I have a proper couch. I have curtains I picked out. I have, in my home office, framed on the wall, a photograph I found in a box in my uncle's storage. My mother at maybe 30 years old, laughing at something outside the frame of the camera, completely unposed, completely herself. I look at that photograph on the hard days, the days when the what-ifs come in. What if I had asked sooner? What if I had answered Uncle Ray's call 3 years before I did? What if I had been less afraid of losing something I was slowly being taught was not really mine anyway? Then I stop, because here is what I have learned, and I want to say it clearly, because it is the thing I actually know now that I did not know before. The money was always mine. The documentation was always there. The uncle who would have helped me was always there. The only thing that changed was that I stopped being afraid of knowing the truth, and the truth, it turned out, had been patiently waiting. Truth is not in a hurry. It doesn't need to be. The same week I finished unpacking my new furniture, the couch, the curtains, the proper kitchen table with chairs that match. I got a package in the mail with no return address. Inside, wrapped in plain tissue paper, was a deck of cards. Old ones, the kind with rounded corners and a pattern on the back that you don't see anymore. There was a note in Uncle Ray's handwriting. It said, "She always said the cards should go to you." I set them on the kitchen table, and I sat down and I shuffled them, badly, the way you shuffle when you haven't done it in years and your hands don't remember the motion. Cards went everywhere. I picked them up off the floor and tried again. By the third try, I was getting it.